U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers that U.S. forces are exposed to Iranian drones and short-range missiles in the region during congressional testimony. Rubio said between 30,000 and 40,000 U.S. troops are stationed across multiple facilities within range of what he described as thousands of Iranian drones and short-range ballistic missiles. The remarks came during a wide-ranging hearing that addressed American policy across multiple regions, including the Middle East and Latin America. Analysts say the remarks highlight the risk U.S. forces face if tensions spike. Rubio's testimony came amid renewed U.S.-Iran tensions and reported military movements in the region, with both Washington and Tehran making public statements about their respective positions and capabilities. The hearing provided a window into how the administration characterizes the current situation and justifies its military posture. The baseline is this, Rubio told lawmakers. We have 30 to 40,000 American troops stationed across 8 or 9 facilities in that region. All are within the reach, theoretically no, in reality, all are within the reach of an array of thousands of Iranian one-way UAVs and Iranian short-range ballistic missiles that threaten our troop presence. The statement formed the foundation of Rubio's argument for maintaining and potentially reinforcing American military presence in the Middle East. In the exchange, Rubio emphasized it was not just a theoretical risk. He called it in reality. The Secretary of State initially said American facilities were theoretically within range of Iranian weapons, then immediately corrected himself to stress the concrete nature of what he was describing. The self-correction drew attention from observers of the hearing who noted the unusual directness of the language. The comment was unusually direct for a public hearing, analysts say. Rubio framed Iran as having large numbers of one-way drones and short-range missiles that could threaten bases. This characterization formed the basis of his argument for maintaining and reinforcing American military presence in the region. The framing presents American exposure as a fact requiring defensive preparation rather than as a theoretical concern. Rubio's framing presents a picture of American exposure that factors into policy discussions about the region, according to observers of the testimony. The Secretary of State used the claimed vulnerability to justify the current military posture and potential future deployments. This approach links regional force structure decisions directly to Iranian capabilities as characterized by American officials. The testimony provides insight into how the administration views the military balance in the region. While the United States possesses significant conventional military power, Rubio's remarks suggest that American officials take Iranian asymmetric capabilities seriously in their planning and force posture decisions. Rubio framed Iran as having large numbers of one-way drones and short-range missiles that could threaten bases, according to his testimony. Rubio claimed Iran has thousands of these systems. Independent public estimates vary, and the specific numbers cited represent Rubio's characterization rather than publicly verified intelligence assessments. The claim of thousands represents a significant stockpile if accurate. One-way UAVs, also known as loitering munitions or kamikaze drones, have become associated with Iranian military capabilities and have been employed in various regional conflicts, according to defense reporting. These systems are designed to be launched in numbers at relatively low cost, representing an approach to military power that differs from the high-technology precision weapons favored by the United States and its allies. Rubio's reference to thousands of such systems reflects his characterization of Iranian stockpiles. Combined with short-range ballistic missiles that can strike targets throughout the region, these capabilities represent what Rubio described as a real and ongoing threat to American personnel, according to his testimony. The characterization suggests American officials believe Iran has invested significantly in these capabilities over many years. The reference to short-range ballistic missiles adds another dimension to the threat picture Rubio painted for lawmakers. Such missiles can carry larger warheads than drones and travel at higher speeds, potentially complicating defensive responses. Rubio's combination of drone and missile threats in his testimony suggests a multi-layered challenge for American defensive planners. Rubio told senators there are 8 or 9 facilities in the region within range of Iranian weapons, according to his testimony. The specification provides Rubio's picture of American military exposure in the Middle East, with personnel spread across multiple locations that would need to be considered in any planning scenarios. The geographic distribution of American forces creates both advantages and considerations, according to military analysts. While multiple bases provide operational flexibility and resilience, they also create multiple locations that would need to be defended simultaneously in any conflict scenario. This dispersal means American defensive resources would be spread across many potential targets. Rubio argued that all of these facilities are within range of Iranian capabilities. American military planners must account for various possibilities regarding the region, Rubio suggested. This framing shaped his argument about the need for defensive preparations and the current military buildup that the administration has undertaken. The identification of specific numbers of facilities provides unusual specificity for a public hearing. Rubio's willingness to cite these figures suggests the administration believes transparency about the scope of American presence serves its argument for defensive preparations. The numbers also underscore the scale of American investment and presence in the region. Rubio said Trump reserves the preemptive defensive option if there are indications U.S. troops may be attacked, according to his testimony. The statement presents the administration's framing of potential preemptive action as defensive rather than aggressive, a characterization that has significant implications for how any future military action might be justified. In essence, if we have indications that they are going to attack our troops in the region, we must defend our personnel there, Rubio said, according to the testimony. The framing characterizes potential preemptive strikes as protection of American forces rather than initiation of hostilities. This linguistic framework could shape public understanding of any future military action. Rubio's statement about preemptive options represents the administration's stated position on conditions under which it might act first. The reservation of preemptive options puts Iran on notice about American willingness to strike first if Washington perceives an imminent threat. This posture has been a consistent element of administration messaging regarding Iran. From Tehran's perspective, according to Iranian official statements, such statements could be interpreted differently than intended, potentially affecting regional dynamics. What Washington characterizes as defensive preparation may appear to Tehran as preparation for attack, potentially contributing to the cycle of escalation that both sides claim to want to avoid. Rubio referenced U.S. commitments and planning tied to Israel's security without detailing the mechanics in the hearing, according to his testimony. These commitments add another dimension to American calculations about force posture and presence in the region beyond the direct defense of American personnel. We also have security agreements, the Defense of Israel Plan, and others that require us to have a force posture in the region to defend against that, Rubio told lawmakers, according to the testimony. The statement links American regional presence not only to defense of U.S. personnel, but also to commitments to allies, particularly Israel. The reference to Israel-related planning suggests American military presence serves purposes beyond direct defense of U.S. personnel, according to Rubio's framing. The specific arrangements were not detailed in the public hearing, leaving questions about the scope and nature of these commitments. However, the acknowledgement of such planning indicates formal coordination between Washington and Jerusalem. Yet these commitments potentially expand the scope of American involvement in any regional conflict. If agreements require American defense of Israel against Iranian attack, American forces could be drawn into hostilities even if U.S. facilities are not directly targeted. This interconnection adds complexity to regional security calculations. Rubio characterized the current American military posture in the region as defensive, according to his testimony. I think it's wise and prudent to have a force posture within the region that could respond, he said. The characterization frames military deployments as reactive to threats rather than as aggressive positioning. Rubio acknowledged that preemptive action was among the options, stating that American forces could potentially, though not necessarily, preemptively prevent attacks against thousands of American servicemen and other facilities in the region and our allies. The conditional language leaves open multiple possibilities while emphasizing defensive intent. I hope it doesn't come to that, Rubio added, according to the testimony. But that's, I think, what you're seeing now. The ability to posture assets in the region to defend against what could be an Iranian threat. The statement frames military movements as preparation rather than provocation, presenting the buildup as prudent rather than aggressive. The framing of military buildup as defensive has implications for how the public and international community understand American actions. If accepted, this framing presents Iran as the source of threat and American deployments as reasonable responses. If rejected, the same deployments might be seen as escalatory moves that increase the risk of conflict. Rubio claimed Iran keeps building missiles even under heavy economic strain, according to his testimony. They certainly have the capability to do it because they've amassed thousands and thousands of ballistic missiles that they've built, despite the fact that their economy is collapsing, Rubio said. They keep spending money on that. The observation reflects the American official characterization of Iranian priorities. Rubio's observation frames Tehran's choices in critical terms. From Rubio's perspective, Iran's investment in missiles comes at the expense of its population's welfare. This characterization presents Iranian leadership as prioritizing military capabilities over the well-being of ordinary Iranians, a framing that supports American pressure campaigns. However, from Tehran's perspective, according to Iranian official statements, military investments represent what Iran describes as necessary defensive measures against external threats. The capability that Rubio characterizes one way is characterized differently by Iranian officials, who cite decades of American pressure and threats as the reason for such investments. The competing characterizations reflect fundamentally different framings of the same facts. American officials see Iranian missile development as aggressive and destabilizing. Iranian officials see the same development as defensive and necessary for national survival. These different framings make diplomatic resolution more difficult. Rubio's remarks, viewed from a regional perspective, represent an acknowledgement of Iranian capabilities that Tehran has long claimed to possess, according to analysts who track Middle Eastern security dynamics. The statement that all American facilities are within range of Iranian weapons aligns with Iranian official messaging about deterrent capabilities. For decades, Iran has pursued a military strategy designed to create options against American conventional superiority through missiles, drones, and regional relationships. Rubio's testimony suggests American officials take these capabilities seriously in their planning. This acknowledgement validates, at least partially, the Iranian strategic approach. The remarks also raise questions about American exposure that factor into policy discussions, according to defense analysts. While American political rhetoric often emphasizes military capabilities and dominance, Rubio's testimony suggests that Iranian capabilities create considerations that must be addressed in any planning. The acknowledgement has different implications depending on the audience. For American domestic audiences, it may justify military spending and regional presence. For Iranian audiences, it may validate the strategic approach Tehran has pursued. For regional audiences, it underscores the risks of any conflict between the two powers. The situation Rubio described reflects what analysts call the asymmetric military approach that Iran has developed over decades. The United States possesses significant conventional military power, including carrier strike groups, advanced aircraft, and precision weapons. Iran cannot match these capabilities in a conventional sense and has not attempted to do so. Instead, Iran has invested in capabilities designed to create options and impose costs, according to defense analysts. Missiles and drones that can reach American bases represent an approach that seeks to make conflict costly for the United States, even if Iran could not prevail in conventional military conflict. This approach accepts that Iran cannot win conventionally while seeking to ensure that any conflict would be painful for adversaries. Rubio's testimony suggests American officials factor this dynamic into their planning, according to analysts. The acknowledgement that American personnel face exposure despite American military capabilities represents recognition that asymmetric approaches can create meaningful considerations for planning and decision-making. The asymmetric approach has implications for deterrence calculations. If Iran can impose significant costs on American forces regardless of the ultimate military outcome, Washington must weigh those costs against any objectives it might seek through military action. This calculus is central to Iranian deterrence strategy. The one-way UAVs that Rubio referenced have become associated with Iranian military capabilities in regional conflicts, according to defense reporting. These systems, designed for single use and relatively inexpensive compared to conventional weapons, represent a different approach to military power than the high-technology precision weapons favored by the United States. The mathematics of drone warfare potentially favor volume when large numbers of inexpensive platforms confront defensive systems, according to military analysts. Each defensive interceptor costs significantly more than each attacking drone, creating an unfavorable exchange rate for the defender. Rubio's reference to thousands of such systems reflects his characterization of Iranian numbers. International reporting says drone and missile attacks have affected regional targets in various conflicts. Houthi attacks disrupted Red Sea shipping and drove rerouting. While exact totals of damage vary by source, the effectiveness of such capabilities has informed regional analysis of what more capable actors might achieve. The Houthi experience provides a preview of what Iranian capabilities might mean in any conflict. If relatively less sophisticated actors can affect international shipping with drones and missiles, Iran's more numerous and potentially more advanced systems could theoretically achieve greater effects against American military targets. The congressional hearing at which Rubio testified addressed multiple aspects of American regional policy, including situations in Venezuela and strategy toward Iran. Senators questioned Rubio about various aspects of these policies, seeking clarity on administration intentions and the reasoning behind current approaches. Senator questions touched on what happens if there were political transition in Iran, with Rubio acknowledging uncertainty about any such scenario. That's an open question, Rubio said, according to the testimony. No one knows who would take over. The admission suggests gaps in American planning for various scenarios regarding Iran's political future. Rubio described the Iranian system as divided between the supreme leader and the IRGC that responds directly to him, along with what he called quasi-elected individuals who must run everything by the supreme leader. He characterized any potential transition as requiring careful thinking if that eventuality ever presents itself, noting it would be far more complex than other situations. The acknowledgement of uncertainty about post-transition scenarios suggests caution about regime change as a policy objective. If American officials cannot predict what would follow current Iranian leadership, policies aimed at changing that leadership carry significant risks of unintended consequences. Rubio argued the Iranian government is under pressure, according to his testimony. The characterization reflects American official hopes that internal dynamics may affect Iranian policy or leadership over time. This framing has been a consistent element of American policy toward Iran. The core problem they face, unlike the protests you saw in the past on some other topics, is that they don't have a way to address the core complaints of the protesters, which is that their economy is in collapse, Rubio said, according to the testimony. He attributed economic difficulties to Iranian spending on what he characterized as military capabilities and regional activities rather than domestic investment. The characterization presents Rubio's framing of the situation. From Tehran's perspective, according to Iranian official statements, sanctions imposed by the United States are cited as the primary cause of economic difficulties rather than domestic spending choices. This competing narrative attributes Iranian economic problems to American pressure rather than Iranian policy. The dispute over causes has implications for policy. If American officials believe Iranian economic problems stem from Iranian choices, pressure might be expected to force policy changes. If Iranian officials believe their problems stem from American sanctions, pressure might be expected to harden resistance rather than produce concessions. Senators raised various casualty estimates regarding reported Iranian government actions against protesters, with some citing extreme figures. Rubio cautioned he could not verify the largest numbers being circulated, according to his testimony. The acknowledgement of uncertainty provides important context for claims made in political rhetoric. "Well, I don't know in the thousands for certain," Rubio said when asked about specific figures. The acknowledgement that numbers are uncertain contrasts with some of the more definitive claims made in political rhetoric about the situation in Iran. Rubio's caution suggests limits on what American intelligence can confirm from available information. Rubio condemned reported crackdowns but said he could not verify the largest numbers being circulated. The statement criticizes reported Iranian government actions while acknowledging limits on what can be confirmed. This nuanced position differs from more categorical claims sometimes made in political discourse. The distinction between condemning reported actions and verifying specific numbers is important for maintaining credibility. By acknowledging uncertainty while still expressing concern, Rubio maintains a position that can withstand scrutiny even if specific claims prove inaccurate. The hearing also addressed sanctions evasion through what has been called the shadow fleet of vessels carrying oil from sanctioned countries. Rubio described sanctions evasion via what he called shadow fleet shipping and used inflammatory language in the hearing, according to the transcript. He explained the mechanics of how sanctioned oil reaches markets. So you have to turn to these pirates, Rubio said, according to the testimony, using his own characterization. You have to basically turn to these ships that are either falsely flagged, meaning they're flying the flag of Liberia, but they don't really have a Liberian flag, or are stateless in their capacity. The description illuminates Rubio's view of sanctions evasion mechanics. Rubio's use of terms like pirates represents his own framing in the congressional hearing rather than a neutral characterization. The language conveys moral judgment about those involved in sanctions evasion, framing them as lawbreakers rather than as economic actors responding to market opportunities. The testimony reveals both the scope of sanctions evasion efforts and the challenges facing American enforcement. The existence of a substantial shadow fleet suggests that sanctions, while creating difficulties, have not prevented targeted countries from finding ways to export their resources to willing buyers. From Tehran's perspective, according to Iranian official statements over many years, the military capabilities that Rubio describes represent what Iran characterizes as necessary deterrence against a hostile superpower. Iran views itself as a country that has faced decades of American pressure, including sanctions, threats, and actual military actions. The missiles and drones that American officials describe as threats are described differently by Iranian officials, who call them defensive capabilities essential for national security. Tehran argues that a country facing the kind of pressure Iran has endured has reason to develop means of imposing costs on potential attackers. This framing shapes how Iranian leaders interpret American statements like Rubio's testimony. The acknowledgement of Iranian capabilities may be interpreted in Tehran differently than intended, potentially as validation of Iranian strategy, rather than simply as a warning about American exposure. The competing framings, American characterization of threats versus Iranian characterization of deterrence, represent fundamentally different understandings of the same military capabilities. Bridging this gap would require one side or the other to accept the other's framing, which neither appears willing to do. Rubio's testimony comes amid renewed U.S.-Iran tensions and reported military movements in the region. American naval forces are reportedly deploying to the area, while Iran has made statements about its own readiness and capabilities. The timing gives Rubio's remarks particular significance. The remarks about American exposure add context to this dynamic, according to analysts. Rubio's framing may reinforce his argument for military buildup as necessary for defense, which is how the administration characterizes the current posture. By emphasizing vulnerability, the testimony justifies protective measures. The testimony raises questions about risks that factor into policy discussions, according to defense analysts. While American political rhetoric often emphasizes capabilities and strength, Rubio's testimony suggests that Iranian capabilities create genuine considerations for planning that must be addressed. The combination of public acknowledgement of vulnerability and military buildup creates a particular dynamic. It signals both awareness of risks and determination to address them through force posture rather than through diplomatic accommodation or withdrawal. The exposure Rubio described has implications for American policy discussions regarding Iran, according to defense analysts. If American facilities in the region are within range of Iranian weapons, as Rubio claims, military action against Iran carries considerations that must be factored into any decisions about the use of force. This reality may affect American options or may drive the preemptive calculations that Rubio referenced in his testimony. The administration's reservation of preemptive defensive options suggests Washington's stated position on when it might act first to protect American personnel. The remarks also relate to Iranian investments in asymmetric capabilities, according to analysts. Tehran has spent decades developing missiles and drones specifically to create the kind of exposure Rubio described. His testimony suggests American officials factor these capabilities into their assessment seriously. The strategic implications extend to deterrence calculations. If Iran can threaten significant costs against American forces, Washington must weigh those potential costs against any objectives it might seek through military action. This is precisely the calculation Iranian strategy is designed to force. Rubio's congressional testimony provides insight into how one senior American official characterizes the current situation with Iran and the military considerations in the region. The remarks that American forces face exposure represent Rubio's framing of a situation that justifies current policy approaches. The testimony comes as both sides make statements and reported military movements occur, with regional observers watching developments closely. American carrier strike groups are reportedly in the region, while Iran has made its own statements about capabilities and readiness to respond to any attack. For observers tracking the situation, Rubio's testimony raises questions about risks that are discussed in policy circles, but not always featured prominently in public discourse. The claim that tens of thousands of American personnel are within range of Iranian weapons, as Rubio stated, suggests that any conflict would involve costs that extend beyond immediate military objectives. The acknowledgement of American exposure combined with the administration's reservation of preemptive options creates a dynamic where both sides have warned of forceful responses to perceived threats. This mutual posture of readiness increases the risks of miscalculation that could trigger the conflict both sides claim to want to avoid.